We're going live. Don't act too silly. All right, we're live.
Hey there, this is
Hi,
Jess.
everyone.
I don't know if it shows my name or not, but I'm driving right now.
So if you do not have video, it will not show your face on the YouTube live. We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Good evening, everyone. This is Karlota Contreras-Koterbay. I'm the juror for the Embattled Bodies, and this is presented by the Mid-South Sculpture Alliance and the Vinegar Projects in Birmingham, Alabama. We are joined today by four of our artists in the exhibition, and we're hoping to get some more as we go along. Before we start, I would like to introduce what the Mid-South Sculpture Alliance is all about. So MSA advances the creation and awareness of sculpture in its diverse and innovative forms, promoting a supportive environment for sculpture and sculptors. MSA endeavors to advance the understanding that sculpture educates, affects social change, and engages artists, art professionals, and the regional communities in dialogue as well as collaborations to contribute in the development of placemaking, empowered identity, and social solidarity. MSA is an affiliate organization of the International Sculpture Center. Its membership is open to anyone, anywhere with interest and commitment to the field of sculpture, including sculptors, art educators, patrons, collectors, galleries, architects, developers, journalists, critics, historians, curators, museums, and students. We have an amazing scholarship program. So the goals are essentially to connect communities in an underserved, overlooked region directly to the possibilities and opportunities of contemporary sculpture. So I'm not going to read the whole information about MSA. You can read about the MSA on our website, and that is www.midsouthsculpture.org. Now, the other presenter for this event is Vinegar Projects. Vinegar is an artist-run, women-led nonprofit contemporary art gallery in Birmingham, Alabama. Vinegar champion artists, and they facilitate the creation and experience of contemporary art, infusing into communities to support, challenge, and enrich the collective consciousness. Vinegar values supporting artists and their projects, emphasizing experiences over commodities, expanding the scope of visual arts programming in Birmingham, Alabama, and beyond, attracting artists to Birmingham, helping artists contextualize their artwork within Birmingham and its history, creating a dialogue with other art institutions in the US and internationally, showcasing all forms of visual art with an emphasis on emerging and experimental art forms and art that pushes the boundaries of its medium. It also champions diversity, exhibiting and supporting artists from underrepresented groups, as well as upholding high standards for ethical, environmental impact in our methods and materials, creating art and events that are accessible to people of all economic and social and cultural situations, and finally, making a substantial, long-lasting effect and impact on Birmingham. Their website is www.vinegarprojects.org. I would like to first thank all of the artists in the exhibition, and also all the other artists who have submitted to this national juried exhibition. We are featuring 10 artists at the Embattled Bodies, Trauma, Displacement, and Dissent. And that is Akosah, Tameca Cole, Brooke, Valerie Gilbert, Knauber, McKelvey, Coralina, Meyer, Nikii Richey, Suzanna Scott, Jess Self, and Sarit Somasa. I also want to thank a very special person who has organized this exhibition behind the scene, and that is Stacy Holloway, our secretary and board director of the Mid-South Sculpture Alliance, and also the chair of the Indoor Exhibition Committee, and McKelvey, also an artist in the show, and also our managing staff at the MSA, and Cassidy Fry, who is facilitating this online event. We also want to thank Melissa Yes and Ann Tronson, co-directors at Vinegar Projects, as well as Kate Fowle and John Fields at the Abrams Engel Institute for the Visual Arts at the for helping us with some of the artists in the exhibition. And I'm sure I have missed a few people who have helped install and organize all of this work. And so I apologize for that. But what we will do today is we will be sharing a special moment with some of the artists wherein they will be talking a little bit about their work, and not just in the show, but their art practice. We will give them like around 5 minutes to 7 minutes each to show some images and talk about their work. And I will introduce them before they speak. And then after everyone has spoken, we will be opening the floor for the question and answer. So as always, we like to do a alphabetical arrangement on speakers. But first, I want to read a few sentences about the show. So the exhibition Embattled Bodies, Trauma, Displacement, and Dissent reinvestigates the body as the governed, embattled, empowered bodies of resistance and agency. From Black Lives Matter to the aggressive assault on the Roe versus Wade decision or the rights for trans youth to receive care, women, LGBTQ, and BIPOC bodies are in constant struggle for autonomy, equality, and self-representation. Through this exhibition, MSA, or Mid-South Sculpture Alliance, and Vinegar Projects employ the agency of art as a platform for visibility and discourse. The works by selected artists redefine, reform, and recontextualize the body and its politics that explore diversity in media, perspective, and innovation in a form that prompts critical dialogue, yet are inclusive, empowering, and serve as embodiment of contemporary issues. The exhibit features three-dimensional work and installation works that portray the human figures as forms of resistance, vessels of memory, experience, and history. Body as form of resistance includes dissent, struggle, and pain. It is persistent and unbound. Body as memory, as physical manifestations of recollection, reflection, and remembering. Body as experience, as a resolution of the will and manifestations of the imagination, elaboration of life lived. Body as history, as anatomical documents, evidence of the past, and surfaces of record for battlegrounds of battles won and lost. So the embattled body strives for self-representation and visibility, including work resulting from reflective discourse, self-gaze, and critical commentary that moves past the simplistic, voyeuristic tradition of the female nude. It celebrates the body in all its complex forms, clothed, stripped, naked, battered, pampered, and all its variances. The body is portrayed for its overflowing potential as vessels of time, markers of place, and repository of memory. So lastly, there are subgroupings in the selected works, those that address policies that polices the women's, LGBTQ, and bodies of color, body in relation to home as place of refuge, trauma, and well-being, the displaced and hybrid bodies, and the incarcerated or figures of redemption. These are some of the defining threads that connect the visual narratives in the exhibition. We have designed a catalog for this exhibition, and if you are interested, please send us a message, or we will send you a PDF through the Vinegars and MSA, and you can request for a PDF version. Now, we will talk about each of our artists now, and our first artist who is joining us today will be Brooke Day. So Brooke Day is an interdisciplinary artist using a diverse array of materials and modalities to create enchanted replication, installations, and experimental sculptures. Day's work spans from the investigation of identity to the non-consensual, blind-eyed realities of toxic social norms, to the ever-developing oppressions of capitalist America. As a queer, female-representing person, Day seeks to shed light on alternative perspectives, advocating for personal autonomy and social evolution. Originally from East Tennessee, they earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the East Tennessee State University in 2017 and completed a Master of Fine Arts at Clemson University in 2021. During both years, they received honorable mentions from the International Sculpture Center's Outstanding Student Achievement Award in Contemporary Sculpture. They has displayed work at galleries like the Reese Museum, Lee Gallery, and Slocum Galleries. They recently curated the 2022 exhibition America Unraveling at the Tipton Gallery in Johnson City, Tennessee, and currently has worked in the juried exhibition Growing Up Queer in the South at the Greenville Museum of Art in Greenville, North Carolina. Everyone, Brooke Day.
Hi, thank you, Karlota. I appreciate it. So I didn't really realize we were supposed to create PowerPoint to share our works, but if anybody wants to, like, if Cassidy, if you want to show some images from the PDF, that would be great.
I can show your pictures while you're talking if you want.
Okay. Also, would you like me to keep it to 5 minutes, or since there's a couple people missing, do you want me to talk longer?
You can speak a little bit longer. 8 minutes is fine.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so if we can start actually with the self-portrait in shoes, that would be great. And I can kind of like talk about the kind of narrative structure of how my body of work has come to be in the context of this exhibition. So it's not showing yet, but in a moment you're going to see a sculpture that is a self-portrait of myself through the shoes that I had been wearing for the past like 2 years, some of them longer, some of them a little bit shorter, some of them are 4 years old. One of them is only like 1.5 years old. Here we go. So this piece is actually a continuation of a piece that I made during the pandemic, when I was displaced not only from my home, but also from my studio. So I didn't really have a place where I could actually make art, and I had to start thinking about how to make art without any space. And in the context of this show and in my work in general, I'm really thinking about space and how your environment is very much a reflection of your own identity and vice versa. And I'm also thinking about the body as a space, the body as a vessel for human consciousness, right? So in that way, this kind of imprint and self-portraiture in the shoes, like the steps I've taken, the kind of persona that I have, like my boots that are covered in plaster because I work in the sculpture studio, and my sandals that are worn down and absolutely falling apart because I've spent a lot of time, at the lake or, outside hiking, things like that. Or, my very nice velvet shoes that have clearly been worn maybe once because I'm working. I'm not going to fancy things or occasions where I feel like I want to dress up. Like instead, it's kind of the body as a utilitarian object. You can also see a nice fun thing that one of the pairs of shoes in the bottom left corner has been absolutely, like, the shoelaces have been destroyed by my dogs, which is also just a really nice thing to have. Amazing dogs that are terrible and chew up my clothes. I love it. It's great. Continuing on from there, I would want to talk about my piece Burden. And if we can put that picture up, that would be great at some point. So Burden is when I started continuing this thought of what does it mean to actually, Karlota, you're unmuted.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay. That's fine. So in the piece Burden, and this is not the piece Burden, but it is a soft sculpture. And the soft sculpture, the velvet and this alluring kind of silky texture is really meant to kind of elevate the look of this piece. But at the same time, it is actually costume fabric and not really velvet. So there's kind of this facade of the body of what we're putting outwardly versus what is really true. And if when you look closely to it, you can see that there is a face, which is a cast of my own face, embedded in this fabric. And like I said, it is a soft sculpture, so it's the weight of it is mostly the face, but also the stuffing of it with this polyfill as well. So it really is having to do with this kind of feeling of weight of just existing, but also making yourself smaller and take up less space. And that kind of idea between that and what it means to actually take up more space. This usually would go hand in hand with pieces that actually like take up large amounts of space. But this one is much more about feeling that sense of being a burden for simply existing. And that's a really heavy weight that's happening. So when you have this kind of soft sculpture that you know is light and airy hanging off of this giant nail and like being pulled down, and the weight of the fabric is something that I was really interested in at the time that I was making this. And then continuing on to my current body of work, which is called the Mavok Project. And if you want to go onto the vessel, the picture of the jar, there's a couple of these in the exhibition. I think there's 3 in the exhibition, and they are sculptures that are, first I should say, a Mavok is a morphic vessel of human consciousness. I'm working within fictive arts in this body. So there's a complete narrative that goes along with this story. That is very fictional, as well as a narrative that goes along with it that is based very much in reality. The ways in which this creature becomes this kind of living organism that feels very corporeal and is at the same time very much like an allegory for our own bodies and the thoughts within those bodies. And a little bit about that. These are materiality speaking. I'm really interested in materiality. These are made out of SCOBY. And if you don't know what that is a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, which is the sort of mushroom-like creature that eats up sugar and tea and excretes kombucha. So if you're a fan of kombucha, this is that guy. So I like to take these sheets of SCOBY that I actually grow and cultivate in my studio, and I like to start drawing them out on found objects. And I really feel like these found objects that I'm getting from thrift stores and things like that have not only a history based on what the item actually is, the symbolism of say a bunt pan and what that really means, but also the history of the people who owned it before me. So I feel like in that way, when I'm drawing these SCOBYs on top of these found objects, I'm kind of imbuing them with that sort of history. And after they're mostly dry, they become this consistency that is sort of like a pre-moistened fruit roll-up. I know, it's appealing. And what I do is take and twist and manipulate and fold them until they feel correct. And then I stitch them together with human hair, sometimes thread. And then I like to add like silicone caulk and sometimes resin to both help make it more archival, but also add to this abject nature of the grotesqueness of a living form, of the realities of existing. And then I hand punch human hair into it to again kind of imbue this human quality into the piece. I started putting them in jars and labeling like this because I was really thinking about like the human, like the unstoppable human need to quantify everything, to take something that's really vast and beautiful and complex and distill it down to its most simple form. Because even if we can't really understand a thing, at least we can put a name to it. And I think it's this kind of illusion that we have as humans, that we have some sort of control over the anomalous nature that is like human existence. So I guess that's all I have to say, unless you have questions. Oh, actually, I should say, I recently did a talk on the actual narrative, the fictive narrative of the Mavok pieces. So if you're interested, that will be up on my website. and on the Civilization of Loros symposium website within the next month. You can also follow me on Instagram to find links there. It's just my name. So my website is brookeday.art and my Instagram is brookewday. And thank you so much, Karlota, for including me in this exhibition. I'm honored to be exhibiting with all of these other amazing sculptors. And also thank you, Cassidy and Stacy and Melissa and Vinegar for putting everything together, because it's just been, you all have been amazing. And I'm also just really happy to be a new member of MSA. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate your talk. And hi, Melissa, welcome. I apologize, there's a few confusion on the time. So Melissa is our co-director at Vinegar Project. So Melissa, if you have some pictures for the exhibit later on, I don't know if you have a few pictures that you can share later. But we'll give you time. We'll probably let the
yeah. So first of all, apologies for being here a little late. And I'm unable to do my camera because of where I am right now. But yes, I did email some pictures to someone earlier today. Unfortunately, because we're starting, because I had my time wrong, I'm not at my computer. So let's see, who did I send it to? Let me pull up my email history from this morning.
If
somebody
you can
has it,
forward it to me. That would be great, and I can pull it up and
I will do that.
share.
You sent it to me, Melissa. I have it, but if you could forward it, that would be great. I haven't had time to edit anything. So
Is that Cassidy or
apologize.
Stacy?
It's Cassidy.
Oh,
Sorry.
Cassidy. If you can forward it to me, I can probably show it too. Our next speaker is Valerie Gilbert. She is she inherited an antique doll from her mother just before her death from ovarian cancer and became infatuated with vintage dolls. Her androgynous forms haunted her. They echoed her mother's lumpy, misshapen body and became synonymous with the deterioration of the human form. Her figures represent encounters with the ravages of time that crystallize the core of identity and character. They express the journey through life and its inevitable confrontation with its body and soul, becoming an allegory for loss, longing, and loneliness. They are effigies serving as reminders that we are all survivors. Please join us in welcoming Valerie Gilbert.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Valerie. I'm very pleased to be included in this show. I did not have anything ready today to talk. I hadn't organized my thoughts, but yeah, my mother died of ovarian cancer and I received a little Bilo baby from her. And at the time, I was kind of seeing them as one reflecting the other. And what impressed me was that my mother's face and eyes and hands were very lively, where her body was useless and had no purpose anymore. And when I started investigating dolls, I was looking at mainly older dolls, I was interested in the dolls without their clothes. And it's almost like the bodies were afterthoughts, and that the faces and the hands were the expressive part of the person or the entity of the doll, which I thought reflected my mother's situation on her deathbed. But I started to realize that all the bodies that I was looking at were androgynous. They were connected only to female dolls, but the bodies there was no sexuality. I mean, until we got Barbie dolls. Barbie, I think, actually I found one in an earlier doll that had a little bit of, like, I think some breasts, but for the most part, you could have taken those bodies off of those female heads and put them on a male body and it would be the same thing. And what I thought about is that how our sexuality, my identity as a female or a bisexual female, and males and their sexual organs, how that defines us kind of on the surface, where I really feel that our identity, and so our identity, it kind of gets overshadowed by our gender identity. And I feel that how I can express myself better as a human being without feeling that I'm locked into a gender identity. And I started, for a while, I was creating dolls that were in similar positions as old dolls, but I started to animate them a little bit because I felt, so that's, yes, that's called a turning doll. And thank you for putting that up there. And so again, to me, this is just the essence of a figure, as the arms, the legs, the torso, and of course the head and the gesture. And I'm probably a lot older than most of you here, and I feel like the experiences that I've had as I've aged are reflected in my body. The abilities that I still have or don't have, and I feel like that I'm trying to also express that in the figures that I make. One of the things, I was in the sculpture department at Georgia State. That's where I went to do my graduate work, and I was really very turned off by the male energy in the studio. There was a lot of noise and grinding and banging and heat, and I started wrapping things, and it was not too long after my mother's death, and I realized that I was wrapping, and I psychologically, I think I was trying to heal her still, and that became incorporated in my work, and I continue to wrap things. So another aspect of my work is that I use almost entirely recycled material. So I scrounge it from weaving studios or from fabric stores, things I find off the ground, and newspaper, styrofoam, just things I have in my studio. I had string, wire, nails, and again, most of it is scrounged. And to me, what I'm trying to get away from the idea that sculpture in particular has to be muscly or masculine or and go through a long process. Another thing, I guess a lot of my artwork comes from our reaction to being in the sculpture department, but they the male people in the studio would, I watched one guy who would make these wonderful drawings of what he was going to do. And then when he started the process, he would just follow his drawings. So I kept thinking that seems antithesis to the making of the work, that the work is for me, the work is in the process. So my process is pretty intuitive and instinctive and immediate. And I use a heat gun to kind of melt the wax, add it. I've just started, these are not painted at all. You'll notice that they're nylon stockings that were given to me by an old neighbor who had she discovered that I was using those in my artwork, and she gave me a whole box of old stockings. And then the stuffing I use, a lot of the stuffing I use is actually dryer lint, and I save different things like that, and I've got just a ton of dryer lint. Is stuffing from inside pillows I'll hang on to and use. So this is actually this body of work is actually a somewhat new evolution for me, because I had been working in clay for a long time and had taken sculpture classes, no official kind of kind of study. I didn't have a schooling, a traditional schooling in sculpture, but I would take different classes in different art schools or colleges or junior colleges, and what I was doing for a long time is clay, and I did clay figure work. But as I've aged, it became more difficult for me to deal with clay loading and unloading my kiln. So I started going back to what I had initially done when my mother died, was starting to wrap things. And I like this. I feel this is very tactile for me and very immediate and very satisfying. And I think that's about it.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you for sharing that experience and the process and your materials. Okay, now our next speaker, let me just close a few of these images so I can read my script. So April Knauber is our next speaker. She's a Filipinx artist, and okay, here. So April was born in Cincinnati and works in sculpture, video, art, and painting. She depicts her experiences as a Filipino-American that are heavily influenced by minimalism and conceptualism. She finds inspiration in everyday moments and takes details that are highlighted and becomes focused on a specific moment of a time, place, or action. Knauber received her BFA in sculpture with a minor in art history at Heron School of Art and Design. She has been featured in 111 magazine, appeared as a guest speaker on Putty, a live art talk show, and Listen Here, Artist Talk. Knauber has been in multiple gallery shows, including Berkshire, Rees and Paul Galleries, The Tube Factory, IMS Museum, Sugar Space Gallery, Harrison Center for the Arts, Storage Space Gallery, among others. Knauber finished her first public sculpture at the Elmira Annis Irvington Civic Plaza and currently works in her Near East Side studio. Please welcome April Knauber.
Good evening, everyone. My name's April Knauber. Like some of you, I was like, I'm kind of winging it a little bit. But I'm going to talk about my experience, especially like post-COVID, it's still COVID kind of thing. So I graduated with my BFA in 2019, and then the pandemic hit in 2020. So that didn't give me much time as a working artist, like just 7 months outside of graduating from art school, to really get out there is like the best way. So during COVID, I actually didn't make any art. I feel like a lot of people flourish as artists during the pandemic, but personally for me, I was very depressed. I just focused on work. I became an exhibit fabricator for a local museum. So thankfully I was still like learning new skill sets, which I feel like have definitely helped me in my current practice. So since June of this year, 2022, is when I really started to get back into like art making and going back to like my concepts, what I originally had. And currently I'm trying to figure out what my voice is like post-COVID, post-shutdown. Who am I? Like getting to re-know myself as an artist and a person. So I'm going to share my screen. It's an older slideshow, but it kind of gives you an idea what I made within the past few years. Let me do that. Can you see it?
No.
No.
It's loading right now.
Oh, it's loading. Okay.
We saw it earlier, but right now it says it's loading.
Okay. On the first slide it says my name and then exhibit fabricator, which I'm no longer exhibit fabricator, but you see. So I'll talk a little bit about my piece that's in the exhibition as well. This piece is called Baggage. It's a concrete suitcase. And I've been making a lot of, in the past, I've also made like concrete.
Excuse me, April, it's not showing the image.
Oh, it's not showing?
Yes. the screen says it's a black with loading. I don't know if that's the same with everybody else.
Yeah.
But I have the picture of that particular piece, but you can,
Okay. Yeah, we can do that if you want to pull that one up.
but if you can try yours, we have time. I'm gonna try and see if I can put it up too. I think that works. Yay.
That worked.
Good.
Then it goes away.
So April, it's whenever you switch to slideshow, so you may just have to show it as it is with the little slides
Okay.
in the preview. I know it's not as pretty,
Oh no,
but-
it's fine.
still, or as clean, but it's still there. We can see it. But sometimes whenever in PDFs, if you go to full screen on Zoom, it doesn't allow you to see it, or
Okay.
yeah,
I'll do
in
that.
slideshows it'll.
You can see that now.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So a little bit about me. I'm first generation Filipino. My mom's Filipino, my dad is American. So I grew up in a multicultural household. And a lot of that has shaped me as an artist. I remember going back and forth between the Philippines. I have dual citizenship, so I lived there for about 2 years. Back in 2013 to 2015, I visited for 2 years. A lot of like my artwork revolves around sound and memories, as Karlota said. I dabbled a little bit in in photography as well. A lot of my artwork also references back to material a lot of the time. So when I think about being a Filipino American, I think about the aesthetics. I think about material I see in the Philippines, material I see in my household. So what is American and what is Filipino, and how am I these two very different cultures? So a lot of the time I'll use from burlap, concrete. I'll also use from found material, found objects as well, and banana leaves. I use a lot of organic material in my pieces as well, mostly found objects. So you can see that in my suitcase pieces. I make a concrete cast of my suitcases, and then I take the hardware from suitcases also. It's an image of the suitcase in detail. So my baggage series, and especially the one I have in this show, it references back to the essentially the baggage of people carry, or the stories people carry with them. A lot of my sculptures, not this one, were way up to 200 pounds. So just transporting them is very heavy. The one in this show, it did have a foam insert with chicken wire. So it was lighter, but still very, very heavy. And thank you to Stacy for transporting it for me. And thank you, and also very sorry at the same time. But Karlota, the write-up you did for this show, I was really excited when I read it, because a lot of people don't know about overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs. So in the Philippines, we like to say a lot of times our biggest export is our people. So a lot of our citizens, we leave the country, and then we find work in an outside country. A lot of the time you send money back home to the Philippines. And my baggage series references that. It's baggage can think about the baggage that you carry as a person. Baggage suitcases is also a way of immigration. It's migration, it's leaving, and something very heavy as well. You don't think about the emotional toll or the physical toll that it takes as being an OFW overseas, especially during the COVID era, having to send money back home. And it's one of the biggest economic resources in the Philippines. My family personally, we still send money back home to the Philippines in order to supply my younger cousins with education, making sure our family as a whole can come up so we can be better future generational wealth, essentially. So this piece is called Between Two Worlds. And again, it kind of goes back to my Filipino American identity. And when I was exploring how to balance that out, at least in Indianapolis, I'm one of very few Asian American artists in the city. So I feel a lot of the time making space for myself has been more difficult or finding a way to translate of what I'm trying to say to my audience. And this piece was actually also repurposed from my first sculpture that I showed you. I made this like during art school. Like I said, the slideshow is a little bit older, but this is like the PowerPoint I have for now. And this is a detailed version. This is actually 2 pieces of wood, and I burned the wood, so it's a layer of soot on top, and I carved out the soot. I made a jig with a metal rod to carve out each one. This was not archival. This soot just disappeared on it, so this sculpture like no longer exists.
Oh.
And this is 4 feet by 9 feet large also. This piece references back. It goes from the peace sign. This is a bronze piece. I made a silicon, I made an allogeneic mold for a bronze mold. So it goes from the peace sign down to the power sign. And this was during the Duterte regime in the Philippines. But it was like, peace isn't working. It's like, what can we do like as the people? It's like, in order for our country to come back up. This piece was, I think, one of the last pieces I made in 2019, so right before the pandemic. This was a 2-year project. I was interviewing other immigrants and children of immigrants, and I'm burning them into rice paper and fabric. This was an installation at Big Carthew tube factory here in Indianapolis, but this took up the whole space of I would say it was about a 24 by 24 room. But I would take those recordings and I would translate them into Morse code, and I would have the stories play on top of the artwork. I used to explore a lot with installation artwork, and I hope that's something I want to reference or explore more in my current practice as I'm getting back into art making. And then this was the public sculpture I did in 2018. It was a 80-foot mosaic that I did in the plaza of a library. But that was the first time I ever did mosaic, and it's probably going to be the last time I ever do a mosaic, because I did that in July, and it was Indiana's summers are very, very hot. Maybe not as hot as the South, but they're very hot and humid up here as well. But I'll stop sharing for now. But overall, I would say like currently right now, I'm like really trying to find my voice as an artist, like an artist who just graduated like right before the pandemic hit and shutdown hit. And I'm really excited to like see what the future holds. Since June, I've had a show almost every month, which has been very tiring, and I'm surprised I'm still functioning at this point at the end of the year. But I recently received a fellowship called the Creative Renewal Grant here in Indianapolis, which is through the Arts Council, which I'm really grateful for. The grant allows me to travel and let me find inspiration again. And then in 2024 in June, I'll have an exhibition through a local gallery called 924 Gallery, where me and 40 other local artists who received this grant will show like our findings and what we found and how we found inspiration through it, which I'm really grateful for. I talked a little bit before this started. I'm going back home to the Philippines next Wednesday for 3.5 weeks. This was before the grant, but the first week I'm going to be setting up with my uncles and other local woodworkers in the Philippines how to learn traditional woodworking and weave practices. And I plan on going back to the Philippines next year for 1 to 3 months to learn traditional woodworking, specifically a woodwork piece called a Capez window, which I'm really excited about because I've tried to make it and I just can't get any of the joinery right, and YouTube's not working. So I'm like, I think I need someone to physically show me how to make this piece. But that's all I have for now. If anyone has like any questions. Oh, and thank you so much for having me in Vinegar and MSS and everyone. And Karlota, I want to say a special thank you to you, because you're actually like the first Filipino to write about my artwork, which I was very excited about. And when I read it, I got emotional when I read it too, because I was like, oh, this is the first one someone from my culture got to write about my artwork. And I was very excited about that.
Thank you, April. I was excited to review her work as well. And everybody, when I was during the show, I actually went to your websites and read a little bit more about your work. So there were around maybe more than 30 entries in the exhibition. And we had that online submission, we have the images, the artist statements, and the bio, but I wanted to learn more about the artist in the show. So each of the work really was special. And one of the artists who will be talking later, Jess Self, one of her work that I accepted was actually submitted for a different MSA exhibition. It was submitted for a call, but she submitted to both Embattled and the MSA Select, and I accepted 2 works from her because I really thought one of the works from the MSA Select really resonated with the Embattled Bodies, and we used that for the cover for the catalog as well. And before I ask we have 2 more speakers, but before I give them the floor, I wanted to recognize the presence of Miss Stacy Holloway. Professor Holloway, thank you so much for all your hard work in this exhibition. The exhibit would not have been possible without Stacy. She hauled artworks from Indiana and installed the exhibition with Melissa for this show. So she is amazing. And that is on top of her own solo exhibit happening and just after the MSA Confab. So you're amazing, Stacy. Thank you for making this show possible. Yes. So we have 2 more speakers, Bags McKelvey and Jess Self. But before we give them to you, we have 10 artists in the show. And since some people had some confusion on the time, I was thinking maybe we can read a little bit about the other artists who are not here yet in between them talking, so that maybe by the time, some people have joined us, Bags and Jess will be talking. If that's okay, I will just read 2 artists for now who I know will not be here today, and then we'll let Bags speak, and then we'll read 2 more of the artists that we know that are not coming, and then we'll let Jess speak, and then we will open the question and answer. Okay, so the first artist that I will be speaking about who cannot join us today is Francis Akosah Akwaboah. Francis is actually one of our recent MSA scholars. So his childhood was in a very memorable experience where in 1995 he was born, and it's precisely 5 years later he was displaced and separated from his parents due to an unplanned birth and economic crisis in his country. So he was given to his grandparents to live in the rural area, where he was used to urban style living and had to adjust to rural living after. So in Ghana, or Ghana's Ashanti region, where he grew up from, my script is not showing because I'm looking at the screen sharing. I'm sorry. I have to continue reading the my screen. Let me just figure this out, how I can do this.
Sorry, Karlota. You should just be able to click off onto your screen and it'll go out.
No, I appreciate it. No, I was just exiting the full screen. I just had to, but thank you for pulling out that picture. So Francis Akosah Akwaboah is an experienced art instructor with 2 years experience teaching sculpture. He has the ability to create detailed and comprehensive lesson plans and is dedicated to the individual student's growth. He is a current MFA candidate at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Akwaboah was born in Ghana and received his Bachelor of Art in Metal and Letter Integration at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, Ghana in 2018. He completed a Master of Art in Studio Art at Eastern Illinois University in Charleston, Illinois in 2021. He has recently completed a graduate assistantship at the Dudna Fine Arts Center. Francis has good interpersonal skills and has the ability to prioritize tasks. He is able to manage inventory, projects, and teams, and is highly effective at communication and managing relationships. So that bio was from his UTK page. So it has a little bit more about his academic practice. The next one is Tameca Cole, and I will yes, thank you, Cassidy, for having the image. So Tameca Cole is 49 years old and a lifelong resident of Birmingham, Alabama. Currently, she is serving a life on parole after serving approximately 26 years in Alabama Department of Corrections. She went into the prison system at a very young age, but always with a hopeful attitude and a better future awaited. Most of the time she spent going to trade school to upgrade her job skills and reading. She signed up for creative writing class sponsored by Auburn University, and that's when she found her purpose in life. Once she reconnected with her creative side, she was able to use art as agency and writing that allowed her to address her personal demons in a way that doesn't hurt others. It gave her an outlet to express the cruelty of incarceration, injustice, and experience with racism that has affected her. It gives the power to show other human beings how degrading it feels to be Black in America and still live under systemic racism. She considers her art to be an educator, a weapon, and a thought-provoking conversation about change. So she said that she would be grateful for any support that allows her to continue to elevate as an artist as well as a civil rights soldier. So Tameca Cole is a visual artist and writer from Birmingham, Alabama. Her works underscore the socio-political conditions of incarceration and Jim Crow era policies on the collective psyche and visual culture of the United States. Through mixed media and collage, Cole explores the revealing and concealing of racial violence and its enduring pain, while also acknowledging and at times celebrating the redemptive possibilities of Black creation. She was recently featured in Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration at MoMA PS1 in New York, which has traveled to Abrams Engel Institute for the Visual Arts in Birmingham, Alabama, the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati, Ohio, and the List Art Center in Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. Other exhibitions include Chosen Family at Marcos Gallery in New York, Systemic Impact, Process and Experimentation of Formerly Incarcerated Artists in Spring Hill Arts Gathering, New Preston, Connecticut, the 2022 Alabama Triennial at the AEIVA in Birmingham, Alabama, and the South Arts Southern Prize and State Fellowship Exhibition at UCF Galleries in Orlando, Florida. Cole's art has been featured in Art in America, Art Forum, Art News, the Brooklyn Rail, MoMAs, The Nation, and the New York Times, among other publications. In 2020, she was awarded an Art Matter grant. In 2021, she was a Right of Return Fellow and State Fellow for South Arts. Cole was awarded an Art for Justice Fellowship in 2022, as well as participating in MoMA PS1's Residency at Large program for artists impacted by the justice system, working with artist Derek Adams, as well as curator Kate Fowl. So those are the other two artists in the show that are not able to join us for this YouTube Live. So now I am going to introduce our next speaker who is here today. She's a very special artist because she's also the managing director for the MSA, Bags McKelvey. Bags lives, works, and teaches in the Chattanooga area, where she is currently an instructor of visual arts at Chattanooga State Community College. Her work has been exhibited both regionally and nationally. Most recently, commissioned to create the site-specific installation Car Jam at the Children's Discovery Museum in Chattanooga and Indigo at the Hunter Museum of American Art in Chattanooga, Tennessee. She is an interdisciplinary artist working in installation, video, sound, sculpture, and multimedia objects. McKelvey holds an MFA degree from Southern Illinois University Carbondale and a BFA degree from the University of Georgia. Everyone, Please welcome Bags McKelvey.
Thank you, Karlota. I really appreciate this opportunity to be exhibiting with all the great artists here. It's really interesting to hear about your work, so thank you for that as well. I guess my work, I'll share screen and hopefully this won't go terribly. Let's see. I guess my work really starts from a place in installation art, which that's not the one I want to show you, but we're going to start there anyway. Can you guys see that? This is hardly an installation shot, but hopefully, there we go. That's the one I want to show you. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So really starts from an idea of space and utilizing space. And so body in the sense of how does the body react? How does the body react to a space? How does the body react to a condition? My forms are generally more abstract and aesthetic, I think, but in a way that I hope achieves some, I don't know, some thoughtfulness of your body in that position within that space. And that's kind of where my artwork has been most recently, but through this process of collecting denim, and Valerie, I feel you, I'm always scrounging for material. I'm an upcycler for sure. With this particular installation, it's 57 pairs of denim jeans that I collected and then hand cut and tied into this rope and then utilized to create this installation. And so with all of this denim, once the show comes down, you got a lot of denim. I've been making some other installations as well. I had one in Knoxville. I had one at Art Fields in 2021. And I just keep exploring its possibilities. And more recently, sorry, there's way too many of these shots. Let's go on. Hold on. I'm stuck. All right, hold on a second. Oops. Nope. Okay, this is going poorly now. Sorry about that. This is where I want to be. There we go. So with the denim, then I started kind of utilizing it in more object space. And this was maybe not the best, I guess, like this for me is an experiment, but I was really thinking about the female body and the female form and how I could kind of replicate the idea of the female body and the female form through repetition of material. And so I started exploring those ideas and really interested in that repetition, that idea of repetition. And that folding, I guess, was very interesting to me, and the color extremes with contrast of the complementary pair, which kind of leads me to these other panel pieces. This is a terrible photograph, so apologies for that. But again, kind of exploring the female form and thinking about it as a sexual vehicle. This one's called Premium on Justice. So also thinking about it as an exploited vehicle in a lot of ways, and the things that the female body has to endure just through stepping through the world, basically kind of went into these panels. This one called Big Muff is actually not that big. It's like 14 inch by 14 inch. And so thinking about, the intimate parts of the female body as well, and the secrets we hold in a way, which this is a big jump then, but then that kind of led me to this idea of, okay, these are objects. What can I do that's more intimate even again and smaller? And so these for me were just a prompt I gave to students that then I was like, oh, I'm going to try that myself to make these tiny little pairs. So lots of found objects. And for me, these became very political in a way. It's hard to see, but this little cork is 2016, which for me was not a great year, politically speaking. And that led me not to this one. Oh, shoot, I'm out. That led me to another pair that was in a show that was made, oh, forgive me, you guys, made from, well, anyway, it was made from a little bookmark that I got from I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm nervous now. But anyway, I made from a little bookmark that had the history of abortion rights. And that was in the Select show. And so that one I made previous to the leak of, what the Supreme Court was thinking with Roe. And then while I was on vacation, this summer, the Roe documents were leaked, right? And so I was in the UK, and I had this very kind of visceral reaction to that because I was in the UK. It was really late at night. I had friends texting me. My family was asleep, and I was death scrolling, basically, just like going through all the images and the memes, and I just started capturing, and I didn't really have an idea of what I might do with those captures, but they became really interesting to me. And I was looking at, women who were protesting on the day, but also previous to the day. And then that just kind of continued. And I kept kind of capturing these images. Sorry, jump. And so all these images, and then what to do. And this form, what I call a poussette, was a form that I utilize in installation making sometimes, where I just wrap these little rosettes in denim as a way to package them so they don't all get tangled up, if you will. And I always like those forms for themselves. And so with this work, the piece that's in the show, what I wanted to do was I wanted to really highlight these women in a way, but I also wanted to think about them as the body, and, as we are, as people who identify as women, a lot of times, and again, where that puts us in the crosshairs of society. So these forms, I call them poussettes, and each one is centered on a little lighted waterproof candle, basically. And then those are image transfers on top. And then each one has denim wrapped around it. I love this one. I have a heartbeat. This one says, "This pastor is pro-choice," which I thought really resonated living in the South. And then I'm only going to show you a few. This one was taken, and it's hard to read, but this was a protest that happened on a reservation out west. And so I got images from lots of different places, and I put them together in this small installation, if you will. It's 17 poussettes. Each one has a different image in it. At the time of its making, there were 17 states that either had banned abortion or were moving towards a ban on abortion quite quickly. And so they are set up, basically the way they are set up is I projected an image of the United States on the wall, and I put little marks where each state was. And so they are set up in relationship to the state where the ban is held. The images are not necessarily from that state, but the images are all about protesting women's right, or people who identify as women's rights in some manner or another, not all of them to do with abortion. So that's kind of where that brought me. And that was really fast. Sorry. You guys, and if you have any questions, I'm open to them. But again, thank you for having me, Karlota and Stacy, all your hard work, and Melissa, and all of you guys.
Thank you, Bags. And thank you for facilitating the call for this national jury show. Bags is also one of our hardworking member at the MSA. So thank you. We would like to welcome another artist who recently joined us, Nikii Richey. And supposedly Jess will be next speaker, but because it's alphabetically arranged, we will have Nikii speak first. But before Nikii speaks, we're gonna read a little bit more about two of the other artists that will not be joining us today, and then Nikii will be speaking. So the next artist, and I apologize, there are 11 artists in the exhibition. Thank you, Stacy, for reminding me. So Coralina Rodriguez-Meyer. Spanning 20 years and 30 countries, Coralina Rodriguez-Meyer collaborates with reproductive justice leaders, queer, BIPOC neighbors, and allies to create democratic fertility habitats by, of, and for queer BIPOC families to transcend structural and domestic violence in American mythology. Her recent Unbearable Fruit, Mother Mold sculptures, and Linea Negra photographs from the Mama Spa Botanica offers immersive healing habitats with embracing retablos inspired by indigenous millenary traditions. The exhibition programs an educational platform transforms white institutional walls into reproductive health sanctuaries, reflecting the neon traditions vibrating in our BIPOC, Latinx, Caribbean, and American immigrant communities. Intimate ephemera, environmental waste, and domestic construction materials are cast into procreative effigy figures, hand gestures, and faces by participants of the Mama Spa Botanica in a series of agency-building workshops. The collaboratively created works are a monument to the survivors of the maternal health crisis in America, where pregnant BIPOC are dying at 6 to 10 times the rate of white women in Miami hospitals due to increasing crisis, including medical violence, tropical gentrification, and food insecurity. The spatial portraits celebrate the vernacular domestic interiors where doulas deliver life-saving reproductive health care, matriarchal interdependence, and solidarity across diasporic communities. The families transfer generational knowledge and embodied wisdom in the workshops where biological and biographical repair bonds and families transcend environmental stigmas. Mother mold body cast and Linea Negra photographs reimagine the bodies, the landscape, and the movement as a climate refugee using synthetic refuse and syncretic traditions cast into liberation mythologies. By the way, Coralina was here earlier today. Unfortunately, she was driving, so she wasn't able to stay with us. So I will just continue reading about her bio, and then we'll read about Suzanna Scott, and then Nikki will be talking. Born in a car in an Everglades swamp, raised queer between Homestead, Florida, and the Caribbean, Coralina Rodriguez Meyer is an indigenous Latinx Muisca Quipu Kamayok. I probably butchered that. Quipu Kamayok artist based in Miami and Brooklyn. She works across disciplines, including community organizing, documentary, sculpture, tech, and urban design. She studied painting at MICA, anthropology at Hopkins, prior to receiving her architecture BFA at Parsons and MFA in combined media at Hunter College. She has worked as an architect and urban designer in NYC for 2 decades while a guest critic at Parsons and Pratt. Her service on environment nonprofit boards, as well as direct action grassroots community organizing, is a framework for collaborating with the reproductive and environmental justice workers who raised her and whose resilience offers navigation for future ancestors. She received awards from ULITE Arts, VSA Arts, Foundation for Contemporary Arts, New York Department of Cultural Affairs, NYAFA, South Arts, Miami-Dade NEA, and Young Arts. Coralina was a resident of Mildred's Lane and the Bronx Museum AIM program. She was a research fellow at Museo Machu Picchu in Peru, weaving urban American iconography into Quipus, Syracuse University, Florence, studying Italian fascist architecture, Artist Institute, New York City, and the Universidad der Kunst in Berlin, examining Nazi utopian urban design with Hito Steyr. New York Times, Village Voice, Hyperallergic, Univision, Guardian, London Review Books, and Jezebel have written about her work at Queens Museum, Bronx Museum, PAM Miami, Smithsonian Museum, Kunsthaus Britannien, Berlin, and CAC New Orleans. She's shown at Air Gallery, Bitforms, and Andrew Edlin. In Chibca, her daughter's Citas name means Ombligo del Mundo, or origin of the world and the beginning of time. Coralina builds skyscrapers, mentors queer BIPOC, and teaches at universities and museums. Coralina's citizenship is performed in matriarchal time to survive species collapse. Now, the next artist that I will read is Suzanna Scott. So Suzanna Scott is an American artist who renders sculptural work from a plethora of materials and objects that examine intersections of existence within the human body. She simultaneously seduces and repulses the viewers using excessive hand stitching, skin-like surfaces, and variations of the color pink. In addressing issues in, of the body, her work draws attention towards many social struggles surrounding equality and bodily autonomy. She often plays a visual sleight of hand, giving the viewer a double take, as seen in Coin Cunts in 2015 to present, where inverted coin purses are stitched up to resemble vulvae. Scott's work has been exhibited across the United States, from Los Angeles to New York, and internationally from Chile to Malta. She lives and works from her home studio in Ruston, Louisiana. She speaks about her work as there has been so much has been said about the body, but she says there is more to say. She says that the body houses us and contains our inner life. Our thoughts and desires are our own until we voice them to others. It is the visible object we project on the world, and it defines us by gender, race, and age. Through her work, she explores forms in and off the body. She is fascinated by the bulbous shapes, layers of sinew and skin, undulating folds, knobby joints, and the constant hum of discharged thought and bodily secretions. It is both sensual and ghastly. It brings pleasure and pain. From birth to death, we are captive to the human form we call the body. She binds, stitches, and layers and sculpts using found objects and a variety of materials, including cloth, paper, thread, resin, and wax. Through a physical process and the repetitive nature of her work, she strives and gives voice to the body. She was born in Pennsylvania in 1974, Suzanna Scott. Now, we still have several artists. So the next speaker is Nikii Richey. Nikii is an artist, curator, instructor, and designer who has called Memphis home for over 25 years. She has been creating things with her hands all of her life and began working with wire about 11 years ago. Through wire sculpture, she transforms thoughts and feelings into three-dimensional objects, which feel like an extension of herself. She often incorporates fabric, rust, and embroidery into her sculptures, and for the past few years, no matter how hard she tries to stop, the work has reflected her relationship with her mother's constant demand for beauty and perfection. Richey has curated several shows in the Memphis area, and her work has been exhibited throughout the Southeast. Everyone, please welcome Nikii Richey.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I was late. I had to work. Anyway, you'll also have to forgive me because I went to New York and got COVID, and now I'm just not all there yet. I'm still very, very foggy and fluid. And just one slight thing about Suzanna Scott, who you just spoke about. I've had the honor of being in her studio, and it's a really magical place. If you're ever in Ruston, Louisiana, definitely look her up. It's worth it. She's fantastic. So would you like for me to just talk about the two pieces that I have in the show?
You can speak about the works in the show or your other works in your practice. We can share some images for you if you want, or you can show your own, you can share your own screen.
Okay. Yeah, if you could show the images from the pieces on the show, that would be great. I apologize. I'm really lately, I really like to play with the tension between trauma and beauty. And the way that I do that is through hand arts. And then I kind of destroy it after I spend a lot of time creating it. And part of that destruction is rust. I love rust. I love to watch what rust does and the different ways that I can manipulate it. And I recently did some rust printing, which is interesting. And depending on the different types of chemicals you use, you get different results, which is, I don't know, it's just, that's where my interest lies right now. And I've also been studying about the history of beauty. So I've been reading a lot of books about the history of cosmetics. Why did we start wearing lipstick? Why did we start darkening our eyelashes? Why did that, who thought of that first and why? And the ways that we continue to poison our bodies with those chemicals. So the piece she has up now is called Bound. And I obviously the stirrups kind of make it feel like legs. But then when you look at the piece, it's wrapped really, really tightly in wire. I like to think about the ways that we as women are expected to present ourselves in the world and expected to present our bodies. And The words from my mother, "That's not very ladylike," keep always pop in my head. I feel like every sculpture I make turns into some sort of body or body representation in some way. So I'm not really sure why that happens, but it just keeps happening. So I guess that's just the way it is. And then if you would go to the other one, I'll talk about that one a little bit. I'm so sorry, y'all. So this piece was a direct response to Trump getting elected, because I literally would wake up every single morning and start crying. I felt that we had someone running the country who really didn't have a lot of respect for women and women's bodies. So these are individual tiers that I sculpted out of wire, and then I stitched fabric around them, and then some of them were allowed to rust. Some of the darker ones were allowed to rust. Some were allowed to rust in different variations. And then they were also dipped in wax, which just kind of gave it this heaviness and this sheen to it that I really was looking for, so that they would be very weighty. And so there are 100 tiers here because we talk about the first 100 days of a presidency. And so this is called 100 days, 100 tiers. And so that's the other one. I think that's all I have to say, unless anyone has any questions. My work. I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm going to mute myself so that I don't cough in your ear anymore.
Thank you, Nikii. We actually have Jess Self as our next speaker, but before she speaks, we will read a little bit about one of the other artists who can't join us today because he's driving to Lexington. So Sarit Somasa is one of our artists. He has 3 degrees in art education, a BFA in visual design, and an MFA in multimedia design. He is currently teaching at East Tennessee State University in digital media department. He taught digital arts, focusing on 3D digital form and animation at Bowling Green State University for 14 years since 2004. In 1998, during his bachelor's degree at the University of Oregon, he worked part-time as a game developer company Dynamics Incorporated, published by Sierra Online Incorporated in Eugene, Oregon. He worked on texturing and modeling on Star Siege Tribes in 1998 and Field and Stream Trophy Bass game. Since 2011, he has been working with 3D animation, digital sculpting, and 3D printing, along with woodworking, metalsmithing, photography, painting, drawing, and video as part of his creative practice. His research practice combines virtual and physical art forms and Buddhist philosophy and psychology, inspired by Freud, Jung, and hidden personalities and dreams. The Thai culture in which he was raised significantly influences his work. His interests include 3D printing, sculpture, kinematic arts, and 3D zoetrope. His future works will use virtual and physical high-tech interactions, such as robotics, holographic, stop motion, and digital animation. The work that you are seeing today was inspired by the notion of filthy forces as subtle and invisible to others. Sarit describes it as being uncomfortable in the environment where one can forcefully situate the low mentality when one is bound by multiple extreme and often disgusting extent. Sometimes one produces a self-project mechanism which could be valid for self-discipline or just an illusion for oneself. And yet the figure is in square and symmetrical gesture but relaxed posture. It implies that one is grounded and contains self-security, or it is just another delusion. The precious gold represents self-values, or it is just a fallacy. And yet one does not know that all the wreckage one receives is just as self-degrading. His primary media are digital tools. First, he digitally sculpts the figure using ZBrush software. Then the digital files are printed with a 3D printer in multiple parts with PLA plastic material. Finally, he hand paints the figures after assembling all the pieces into the complete sculpture and the segments into the finished sculpture. So, Sarit Somasa. Now, our next and final speaker is Jess Self.
Hi.
Jess Self, we will introduce her and then we will give her the floor. Jess completed her MFA at Georgia State University and is a recipient of the prestigious Elizabeth Grinshields Foundation Award. She primarily makes figurative sculptures and loves to incorporate textiles, mysticism, and cultural content. Much of her early work made completely of needle-felted wool touched on themes of trauma and abuse. This work has been exhibited across the world and has received positive reviews in several publications such as Create Magazine, Fiber Art Now, and Emergency Index. How we build emotional bonds with each other is one of her central concerns. In addition to making exhibition work, she enjoys traveling and participating in craft shows. Everyone, please welcome Jess Self.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here with all of you amazing artists. And thank you so much, Karlota, for choosing some of my work to be in the show. Like Karlota said, my work has dealt a lot with themes of trauma and abuse and social anxiety. The work in this exhibition fits with that pretty spot on, but let me share my screen real quick. So the works that are in this exhibition are Portal Avenue and Siren. And so before I started graduate school in 2018, my work was mostly focusing on social anxiety. You can see on my website here some pieces that kind of go with that, like this one here where it looks like she's kind of turning into her bed. I've had a lot of social anxiety where I've not been able to get out of bed for days on end. And so when I started graduate school in 2018, I was trying to think of where my work was going from there. And lucky, not lucky, I had a lot of inspiration that first semester of school. Right before I started at Georgia State, I went to visit my father in California. He was very sick, and since he was sick, he needed some of my help helping with my grandmother. And we went to her house, and I actually experienced quite a bit of sexual trauma at that house. And so it was the first time that I had been there in over 20 years. So it was kind of a big deal. And it was very odd for me to be in that house because, you know, throughout the years, my grandmother would tell me about how she was renovating and doing all these things. And then, but I always in my mind had an idea of what the house looked like still. And then when I actually went back there after 20 years and I saw the renovations, it was unrecognizable from my memory. And it seemed pretty messed up to me, like it was intentional. They didn't want me to remember what room was what room or something like that. I was kind of haunted by it. And I just started making this house over and over and over again. And this is a piece, not in the show, but it's part of the series of these houseworks. It's called Just Another Tuesday, and it's a body needle felted out of wool, and it's a younger girl, and I guess the joke is she's wearing Wednesday's underwear because Tuesdays needed to be changed. So it's pretty dark, but it was definitely a stepping off point for me in finding my voice, I guess, like you were talking about earlier, finding your voice and being an artist outside of under and what that means for you going forward. And so I made this house piece. This one is life size. There's a body cast of myself, and then there's the house with two sides of it. There's two sides to every story, says my grandmother. So after making, or I guess this is the one in the show. This one is called Portal Avenue. It's the same house made over again, needle felted wool. The roof is made out of Tyvek, which is a building material, and then felt sheets that are heat treated textiles. And after making these pieces, in graduate school, they want you to keep pumping out work as fast as you can. So I was trying to challenge myself with what I was making, wanting to still explore these ideas, but trying to, do this really tedious, slow moving work, but in a grad school pace, I guess. And so the piece that was chosen for this siren was actually just a challenge for myself to see how many pieces I could make with only 7 days on each piece. So this piece took 7 days. My arm was pretty destroyed afterwards, but it was also kind of a middle ground between, or a transition between the house series to my next body of work, which is more about, shedding off the old and showing the pure newness underneath, or just trying to show how trauma would show up on the skin, and then how you can move on from that and use those experiences to make you stronger, that kind of thing. But this was kind of that surly phase in between where I'm just like feeling insecure, not knowing what I'm going to make next, also feeling pretty gross about what I've been thinking about for a year, and just thinking about how this is also around when Trump came into office too, with feeling about how women are just treated like a bunch of holes. And not feeling like we have a voice really, and that's a part of my anxiety and insecurities too, is like how I speak for myself. I don't want to do that, so I let my art do it for me, but also feeling insecure about how loud I am and able to get my thoughts across, because I think a lot of that was from that body of work too, where my dad's side of my family never believed me and the abuse that I had experienced. So that voice, I guess, is what I was trying to show in this piece, or lack thereof. My work after that, the house series, went more to hear what I was telling you about, shedding off the old and having the new, and ourselves as like different layers of onion. That transition to a reflection of all of the archetypes that I have embodied throughout my life. And so that was my most recent series of work. But then now so you can kind of see how things have progressed from like social anxiety to, where did that social anxiety come from? My abuse, where am I taking myself, and what have I learned from that, and how do I feel like I can help others with that work, to a reflection of, my whole life and how we are connected through the archetypes that we play. And then now I'm taking a deeper dive into specific archetypes. The one that I am diving into first is thanks to the Elizabeth Green Shields Foundation grant. I was awarded last year, and they gave me that in order to do research into the wise and wild archetype and healers. So, I want my work to help and heal other people as well as myself. But now I'm looking into the women that we look up to and think of as our healers. So I spent 10 weeks this year traveling to Korea, Nepal, Mongolia, the Philippines, and Papua New Guinea, sitting with and spending time with interviewing shaman women or grandmothers, all different types of healers that you might think of. And I'm not really sure exactly what that series is going to look like. It's going to be 5 to 7 figurative sculptures. But since I've been working a lot with life casting, I've been making life casts of the women that I seek as my healers or who I go to for advice, like my mother, my best friend, my mentor. So I know that that's my starting point. But I'm super excited to get started. I'm just in that stalling stage of like trying to get the confidence up to actually execute those ideas. And also my studio does not have heat, so that's a good reason to procrastinate. But yeah, I have time for questions if you have any, but other than that, I think that's my spiel.
Thank you, Jess. And before we open the Q&A portion, so please start thinking about questions that you have for our speakers. Stacy, do you have some few words that you would like to say? You've been such a significant part of this exhibition.
No, I just felt very strongly about some of the political things that were happening, and I don't feel confident that I can successfully talk about those issues. So I did know that one thing I could do was help put together and organize an exhibition with people who are good at talking about these issues. So I think that, Vinegar, of course, I'm on the board for their organization as well. And I think this was their first guest exhibition. And Melissa, Yes, and Anne Tronson were very proud to work with the MSA artists for this show and MSA. So let me see here, the show. And so, so I just knew what I'm good at. It's not obviously talking. So, but I really, really appreciate all the amazing thought that went into during the show by you, Karlota, that I don't think I've ever worked with a juror that put this much time and energy into composing a show, down to the fact that you were like, I would like to see this piece next to this piece. And I mean, like you even told us like how you would like, how you envisioned how the exhibition would be curated as well. And so it was a really awesome to work with you. And of course, all these amazing artists are like, you guys just blow me away. I can't believe the show was so much more than what I thought it was going to be. So I'm just super excited about it. So thank you for letting me be involved with this.
Thank you, Stacy. And later on, we'll probably put you on the spot again to share, because Melissa was unable to continue joining us to share some of the comments, but we will let the conversation and the questions and comments first, and then later we will have you talk about the comments on the show, the reactions during the reception, because some of us or most of us were not able to come, and then Cassidy will also show some images of the installation shots. So anybody have question for each other? I will start. And this is to everyone. So in the current political climate, how most of you have spoken about this already, but can you speak a little bit more about the potential of art as agency in the politics of the body, and in how this can help not just the artists who are producing the work, but also for the audience and the communities in helping kind of resolve or reinvestigate the politics of the body? Can you talk a little bit more about that in relation to your practice? You can just unmute if you want to answer.
I can actually say a little bit about that. So something that I didn't really talk about when I was explaining my works earlier, and especially the Mavok project pieces that have this narrative connected to them, so much of that narrative is allegory for other things, but as a general whole, I think that this creative world building is in itself a form of activism, because if we can help people to believe in something that is fictional, right? If we can allow people this kind of escapist, like creative place where they can believe that things are real, even if they're not. So if you can like allow yourself to believe that a unicorn is real, then it's easier to believe that you have the ability to create social change. If something completely impossible is possible within your creative mind, then it really sets the stage for people being able to think that their voice matters, and that they have the ability to take autonomy back from from a country that's trying to take it all away. So that's a big part of my narrative body of work. I'll let somebody else talk.
Thank you, Brooke. Anybody else who wants to rejoin her response?
Can you expand on what you mean about politics of the body?
Well, like the various policies affecting the body, the not just the actual politics that are in the election or with the political climate and the elected officials, but also the power struggle, the body as a battlefield, or as women, as LGBTQ, as BIPOC bodies, we're always struggling. There's always this kind of push and pull and narratives that are either erased or they are sort of negated or misrepresented. So how are we as artists able to help in that kind of conversation? And by the way, we just have been joined by Francis Akosah. So we might actually have him speak after some of you respond to the question.
I could take a stab. I think for me, in the way I've been thinking about the body and the female body, and I reflect a lot. I have children. I have teens and tweens in my house, and I reflect on them and watching them figure out how to navigate the world, and especially as female and transgender children trying to navigate that world and find their place in it, and dealing with the amount of, I guess, toxic masculinity and all kinds of things that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I feel like in thinking about that, but also thinking about my own place as a woman within culture and how things are affecting me and how things have affected me throughout my life, and then making that work, I hope that I'm allowing other people to maybe resonate on that themselves, or feel seen in a way, I guess, or just that solidarity, but to make that work and to put that work out there and to create that idea of solidarity, and there's somebody else out there having these thoughts or these feelings, and then and hopefully that can help lead to, in not my work, inspire somebody necessarily, but that idea of solidarity, right? That we all have this common struggle, then that can help push somebody forward. And think about the impossible, like you were saying, how can we inspire others to think about how they can move forward? Like Brooke was saying, I think that's an amazing thought, so, and I feel a little bit of that. It's true for me as well.
Thank you, Bags. Valerie, April, Nikki, Jess, before we give the floor to Francis, any last comments before we move to another topic?
Yeah, I think that showing or sharing vulnerability and honest experience is something that can make people connect with it and maybe start a different conversation if they're not having it already, or at least, like Bags said, definitely big thing is just making people feel seen, which we like to throw those words around a lot now, but it's not really, not sinking in really that much for people. But if they can have a visual that can make them feel something or feel connected to something, then I think that that's helpful, even if it's not like starting a big, splash or something.
I feel that and growing up, I had a lot of shame around my body in many different ways as a woman, and I think I've transcended that for the most part, but it's taken me a long time. And what I'm trying to I think do in my work is kind of the essence of we're really all basically the same. And we hurt the same, we feel happy the same way, we love the same way, and that's kind of, I'm wanting to distill the essence of a human being rather than the essence of a woman or a man, the essence of a person.
Thank you, Valerie. Before we move on, we would like to give Francis an opportunity to speak a little bit about his work. Earlier, Francis, we read about your bio and a little bit about your statement. So some of our viewers have heard about you, but I will introduce you again briefly. So Francis Akosah Akwaboah was born in Ghana and received his Bachelor of Art in Metal and Leather Integration at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, Ghana in 2018. He completed a Master of Art in Studio Art at Eastern Illinois University in Charleston, Illinois in 2021. He has recently completed a graduate assistantship at the Dudna Fine Arts Center. And now, everyone, please welcome Francis. Please unmute yourself, Francis. We can't hear you. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing great. So the time was quite confusing, so I just checked the time and I had to quickly join in. So sorry I'm being late. That's all. So okay, so basically my work now really is heading toward the unity among diversity in every environment I find myself into. So basically my current work I just did recently talks about the unity among diversity in the art space or even wherever I find myself. So basically from my especially from my background where I grew up, I realized we have over 6 tribes in Ghana, in the west part of Africa where I come from. Yeah, and then among these 6 tribes, we speak over 81 languages among ourselves. And irrespective of 81 languages we speak in, we all have this. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, so over 81 languages that we speak among ourselves, among these 6 ethnic tribes. I realized there's this kind of unity we build around each other. So based on this unity, I'm trying to kind of move with that theme, and then mostly in my works, you can see a lot of like things like 2 or 3 other things kind of coming together to form a one whole. So just like the picture slide that I just installed, you see we have like there are a lot of different pictures like coming together, like pictures from the like trees, houses, places, human bodies, and like a whole lot of pictures coming together to form one to create like that home. So I refer that as like the unity that is between these different diverse areas, and then they coming together to form one member. And for me, it created kind of the unity, like the peace, the unity among these things. So basically my project is more about like the unity among the diversity in like so that's a picture slide. So basically my work is mostly based on the unity among diversity among people wherever I find myself. Yeah, so I titled this piece is Enkai. So Enkai is a local in my local dialect means memory. So I was trying to kind of connect like the place I have visited, the place I have been, and even me moving from Africa to the United States, the things I've seen and I've experienced, and I'm trying to like kind of join all these things together to form a big picture that people can draw closer to it and also have inspiration from it. Yeah. So these pictures were old pictures that I salvaged from this recycled dumpster in Eastern Illinois University. Yeah, they were kind of renovating a building, and they were going to trash these pictures out. And then I just told them, can I use them for my artwork? And then they just gave it to me. So I have a whole pile of them. And then I'm trying to use these pictures to communicate my memories that I've collected, or like that I've experienced in my past and then in my present, for others to kind of have that space to interact with them. Yeah. So that's basically the space is really going on. Like that's basically that is going on in this picture. So it's full of buildings, it's full of trees, it's full of insects, it's full of waterfalls, and it's full of everything like that comes in mind of artists. So whenever people approach to this piece, it kind of like you can see a memory, like a picture of something, and that will kind of trigger the person's memory kind of. So that, for instance, there's this waterfall inside here. Yeah, there's this waterfall inside, and there's this plant inside. Sometimes there are people who really connect to certain pictures or certain certain images that kind of remind them of where they've been to, or like kind of bring memory to something. So I just want like my viewers, whenever they approach to this particular piece with a torch or with their flashlight, they might see an image which will kind of make them remember their loved ones, or like a place they visited and they will really want to visit again. So it kind of like bringing memories to others as my viewers like approach this piece. Yeah. And also the movement in this picture also relate references the place I come from. We really do a lot of weaving of clothing. Yeah, so I like so I brought in the concept of fabric in this picture. That's the memory. So it's like in every memory I was trying to reference my grandma when she was teaching me how to weave on the traditional loom as also, and then I was making like beautiful clothing and beautiful quilts. So the movement to this piece kind of give it gives the viewer the feeling of it being very flexible. Aside the rigid how rigid the material is, you can still see the flexibility in it. How I kind of pull it in a certain way to create that cloth like movement in the piece, kind of like always references like how my grandma used to teach me how to weave on the traditional loom to build a very big cloth, like a very big cloth. So the cloth installation as well, so references like my upcoming when I grew up with my parents, like with my grandparents in the rural space. That's why you can see the flow of the cloth like installation in this piece as well. So it's safe. So I think this piece is really talking about like memories that I've shared and the memories that like memories of place I have visited, and also I'm still trying to let people to see my background in this space, like where I grew up, from where the weaving of cloth, is something really important to me, and I'm trying to let people also know a little bit about my culture in this piece too as well. Okay, so is there any question?
Thank you, Francis. And does anybody have additional question before we will give one last comment or question opportunity for everyone, because I think we're only up to 7 o'clock, but we will extend a few minutes. So do you have parting words, and do you as women or bodies of color, how do you see your work move forward? And if you have a last message to share as well, please do. And we'll just go from like my screen from top to bottom. So we'll start with April.
Let me think about that. Yeah, I would say like a comment for me. I am very thankful and honored that I was selected for this exhibition. I remember I drove down from Indianapolis to Birmingham, Alabama, and we just went straight to the galleys. And I remember when I walked in, I was I was like very happy when I was like shocked. I was like, everything just seems very like cohesive and really well put together. I was very happy how everything turned out. Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity. I don't know what much else I can say, but yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, April. Valerie, do you have a few words to part with us?
Sure. I came to the opening and I was and I feel the same way as the young woman that just said. I walked in and I was kind of blown away by how beautiful it was. It was presented so beautifully, and it was it's obviously a very small gallery, but it looked like everything was where it was supposed to be. I was thrilled with the presentation and to be involved, to be included. Thank you.
Jess?
I'm just loving seeing all of these images. I haven't had a chance to see what was even in the show other than my work. So it is really stunning. I love metal and textiles together. Look at all of it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't have much to say, but thank you so much for the opportunity.
Nikii?
I'm loving these. This is the first I've seen of it, and I just hope that I can get there before it closes. I'm really honored to be next to all these incredibly talented artists.
Brooke?
Yeah, I mean, same sentiments. I feel really thrilled to be alongside, like, you guys are amazing. This was so great to hear everyone talk about their work and really be able to see so much of this work. I've only seen a few images so far, so this is really amazing. And I also hope I get to come down there before it closes. I would love a closing reception. But yeah, I would say, I guess, like that my work in the future, I'm going to continue with the Mavok project and trying to grow that more and more. And I'm also thinking more about biomaterials in my artwork because I already cultivate SCOBY, and considering like, what does it mean to feed the material that you make your art out of, to care for it and keep it warm and safe and keep pests away from it. There's a lot that goes into it. And right now it doesn't necessarily feel like it's collaborative, but I really want to play with the idea of what does it mean to use these biological materials in a more collaborative way. So I think that'll really continue like adding to these ideas of like autonomy within my work. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what you guys do in the future, and hopefully I'll get to come down and see the show. Thank you again.
I just wanted to say one other thing, in that I feel that the combination of materials and there was a very tactile sense to the whole show, and the glass in relationship to the to the fiber on the wall and the hanging. It was a feast for the eyes, the show.
Bags?
Yeah, I too am just loving seeing all these images. I haven't gotten to Birmingham yet, but I hope I get there before the closing, which has already been said so many times, but it looks wonderful. Karlota, thank you for all of your work and your care and putting the show together, and Stacy for all of your care and hanging, and Melissa for your support and all that you've done. And I feel really inspired after listening to all you guys, and I'm just really pleased to be a part of the exhibition. And looking forward to seeing where everybody goes next, and seeing where I go next for that matter. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Embattled Bodies artists. This exhibit would not have been made possible without your amazing, inspiring work. Please continue being wonderful and marvelous and powerful. Thank you for providing visual narratives and voices to some of the unheard bodies and sentiments out there. Cassidy and Stacy, do we have some information about MSA that we would like to share before we end this event?
So I will say we do have one question from YouTube that has come in from Jason Brown. But it's, have any of you participated in similar activist exhibitions to affect social and political change?
No.
No.
Anybody can answer. Please unmute yourselves when you want to
I was
answer.
recently in a show that was benefiting Planned Parenthood, and it was all about, it was all about abortion rights. So definitely in the same vein as this one.
Yeah, I mean, recently I was in the exhibition Growing Up Queer in the South, and it really was trying to like kind of bring attention to what that means to be growing up, in the Bible Belt and identify as a queer person. Yeah, so that was a really great show to be a part of.
I've been in some exhibitions, mostly dealing with anxiety and mental health.
I've made a few small commissions for donations that were auctioned off for a couple small galleries in the city, mainly for abortion rights.
Thank you all for your art practice and your generosity supporting these organizations. Speaking of political art, there is actually an annual event that we organize here at ETSU. It's called the Fletcher Exhibition, politically and socially relevant art. It's an annual show at the Rees Museum. It's an international juried exhibit. So if you are interested, please look at it. It's called the Fletcher Exhibit. And the Slocum galleries are always reviewing proposals. We just finished the December 1 deadline, and so it will be for next one, but we always appreciate curatorial works and solo exhibition proposals from artists who are BIPOC, LGBTQ, Appalachian, minority, and men and white, everybody who are making innovative and significant work out there. So you can look at Slocum Galleries if you are interested. And I'm sure Vinegar projects will be excited to have some of your work again in the future. So if they have a call, just look at their website. And MSA is always encouraging new memberships. So if you all are members of the Mid-South Sculpture Alliance, but please encourage your students, your network, your friends, your other artists, colleagues who are in the sculpture area to join MSA. There's a lot of opportunities. We also have a lot of scholarship opportunities for students. So please visit our Mid-South Sculpture Alliance website. And so if there's nothing else, Stacy, last one, our chair for the for the committee. Actually, you can promote our conference because you are now the chair for our next year's conference, right?
Yes. Sorry, my heater is going off in the background, so hopefully you guys don't hear it. But yes, we are starting to plan for November of 2024, where we will have UAB, University of Alabama at Birmingham, as well as Birmingham, Alabama local artists will be hosting the next conference, the next Mid-South Sculpture Alliance conference. So please be sure to check. We'll have more information about that coming up on our newsletters and on our website, midsouthsculpture.org. And then once again, too, Vinegar, Melissa can't, she had like 10% on her battery, on her phone battery left, but I did want to point out that they are an artist-run, woman-led, nonprofit contemporary art gallery, and they are definitely champions for artists, and they facilitate the creation of experience in contemporary art, infusing it into communities to support, challenge, and enrich our collective consciousness. And they do show, actually, I think they show more artists outside of Birmingham than they do Birmingham artists, because they're trying to bring some more views on things and different artists into our community. So they also have interesting things like some of their programs. They have, they've had in the past their SHAPE residency, which was a virtual residency program. So I encourage you guys all to check that out as well. And their website is vinegarprojects.org. So yes, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Stacy. So we want to conclude our event tonight. Again, we thank all our artists and also the people who are watching the YouTube stream live. So thank you for staying with us and being patient with some of the technical difficulties. We also want to invite you all. In 2023, we will have our MSA Confab in Oklahoma. So please try to make it for that one, and then prepare for the 2024 MSA conference in Alabama, as Stacy has advertised. So again, thank you all. We appreciate you. We appreciate MSA and Vinegar Projects for having this exhibition, and all the artists who are part of the show and those who have submitted, and continue inspiring everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you, Karlota.
Thank you, Cassidy.